righty. So, unit 2 check today, and I'll let Miriam announce the evening review that you set up, so I'll let her announce that. I'm gonna let Miriam and Sarah kind of run the review. One of them is more of a traditional kind of written knowledge check of content, and then Sarah has a practice kind of quiz kind of thing that again is useful. So I'll be here to answer questions, clarify some things. So I'm going to turn it over to these.
Okay. So, like you said, we have a quiz and then this knowledge check, which can be used as like a study guide, kind of. I went a little overboard. There's 56 questions, so should really prepare you for the test, even if you only do some or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do y'all want to start with the quiz? Do y'all like how we started with the quiz last time? Okay, we'll do that. I'm gonna send it in the 310 group me, and then I'm also gonna put it up on here.
You need to, you need it on, you want it on the main screen?
Yeah, I was gonna like pull it up like this, like how we did last
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Yay. Yeah. Are you able to access it through the link? Is anyone not in the group me?
It's actually a great visual with those arrows, how everything's rotating the same, but at any given point, both arrows are pointing in two different directions.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, so before, just make sure Sarah comes and does the, I think it'll see better without the lights down.
Yeah.
So the quiz that Sarah and Miriam are about to do was sent to the group meet. Sarah, if we can, sorry, if we can do the.
If it's asking for a code, it's 613451.
I'll write it on the board. 6.
Are there people in there?
613451.
There's nobody in.
Oh, there's nobody even
But
there.
they're recording.
Like that? 6,
Yeah.
1, 3, 4, 5.
And then if you can't access it through the link, you can look it up by going to this website and then putting in that code, which is how probably they'll do it.
So it's joinmyquiz.com, and then you would just search that number, 613.
Yeah, it's like asking for a code.
Awesome. And again, that's in case someone's watching the live stream, they're trying to find it. Joinmyquiz.com, and then the 613451.
Okay. Is it letting us start or is it waiting for me to start it? All right. Hope you study.
Oh, yeah, it gives you real time. That's okay. Literally take me my whole life. But I respect the game. I respect the game.
Set it to a minute per question. Split screen. I started the
casting quiz. I might put in the code over here.
She leveled up.
She's, yeah.
That's what put you involved in whatever it was. So students are taking the practice quiz that we had just prepped on. So if you're just joining us, that's what's happening. Just go back and look. We showed the QR code, and we also gave a verbal means to get to the practice quiz. So that's what everybody's doing right now is they're taking the practice quiz, and then we will go over it.
But this one, so if I send it to people, they can't do it after this class. Because I do the coaches for that, but then I'll reopen it before they leave.
All right, Swift.
That was between 13 and 56.
All right, Swifty.
It'd be nice, yeah.
All right, Swifty.
Yeah, I have a favorite number. Yeah, look to it. Yeah. I just started going crazy. Alphonse, yeah.
I know.
was just clarifying my children how to spell. What would you say? What would you say? So that's what I'm saying.
I've actually asked that question. It's a great question. But I think where I tried to help you is from the time of position, how many possible ways can you do? Is, you know, from here, that I can add, I can have, so I can extend the next part, or you can do it to putting that when you're in anatomical, how many different mental eliminates. Oh, there's that person. I've asked him. And I think it's also important to talk about that these guys testing the views on this, clarify some things like that. So, yeah, absolutely.
Raise your hand if you're done.
There's 3 people. Oh, that's probably that is then. I can't get back to work at breakfast. But they might have seen it correctly. Maybe. You're right. You're right. Is that what you do? Is that what you do? Yeah. I do. I want the lights.
Is everyone done?
Start going over.
So you guys remember, just like when you do an internship, your senior year, that internship, surrounding yourself, kind of being encapsulated in that career, is going to do hopefully one of two things, and both of them are good. It's either going to confirm, hey, this is really what I want to do, or it's going to be like, whoa, I didn't realize this is what this was about. This isn't what I want to do. Both of those are great, because the last thing you want is to commit to something that ultimately you may not like. So what I love about these kind of quizzes is that it allows us, it's not just about what's right and wrong, it allows us to have discourse and discussion on semantics and clarifying things and kind of looking at things in terms of so it's not just a 4 + 4 is equal to 8 kind of quiz, which is what I kind of like about it. Kind of stimulates nuanced conversations for the quiz that is going to matter. more in terms of your grade, right, next Wednesday. So if they won't be able to pull those up, I'll go ahead and put it up on the screen.
For those rewatching.
That's what.
Yoink.
So this is just a position question. Based off the picture, what is the position of first her hips and then her trunk? So her hips are flexed, and to counteract her hips being flexed this way, she extended her trunk. Y'all see that?
Any follow-up questions?
Anybody have a question on that? Those that missed that?
Speak now or forever hold your pelvis. Ba-dum-bum.
Okay. So the start position is a cow position, and then she goes into cat. So based off this, what pelvic girdle rotation occurs from start to finish? Did anybody have questions on this one? Or did everyone? I know it's kind of hard to see. I have to zoom in a little bit. I wish I could make this bigger.
Raise it up, like.
Oh,
raise
it's
it
bring it
up.
up closer.
I'm just throwing it out there.
Is that better? Yeah, okay. So in the first picture, she has that anterior tilt to her pelvis because she's flexed there. And then in the second picture, she has hip extension. Okay, now let's look at her trunk. Her trunk is extended in this first one. It's like this. And then she goes to a flexed position of her trunk. So what pelvic girdle rotation occurs from start to finish? So because she has that hip extension and trunk flexion, she has a posterior pelvic girdle. And the only answer choice that was like correct in those two answer choices was because of trunk flexion. Does everyone see that? Those that missed that, do you have a question about it? We can talk about. Okay.
Go back to the.
Yeah, you need to pull it back up.
No, you're fine. Rotate it. I just want to get some of the people that see it in a different way. Rotate it like this. Perfect. Do you see how, even though it's more of our kind of traditional standing, it's still the same thing. That's what I'm trying to get you to see. When we were doing the standing, you see that? Like if we looked at it like in a more traditional, I'm tilted here and then I'm tilted there. And so from the pelvis and the joints, it doesn't matter if she's stretching her back, standing up, it's the same concept.
This is that like stick figure.
Mm-hmm.
And if you turn the stick figure, maybe you'd be able to see it a little bit better.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Sure. So what is the pelvic girdle pelvic girdle position for this one? So the best way that I think about it is the water coming out of the front. If you have anterior rotation, so if I started here, ended here, this is my picture. So I'd be anteriorly pelvic girdle rotated, or my pelvic girdle would be rotated anteriorly. Yeah. Does that make sense to everybody? Water's
Sarah,
coming out the front.
Sarah, do you mind doing it only because your belt line is easily visible?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Miriam, you can do it too, but just to see the belt, to
There's
see
like
like your waistline, like almost kind of acting like that. What'd you say, a bucket?
Yes.
Right, so like your waistline is the bucket, and when you enter the tilt, you can literally see like the
Yeah.
whole, like the string,
Like you're
literally the
wet
string,
from
like
here.
it does like that. Does that make sense?
You also kind of see the fact that like if she was to have like flexed first her hips, whenever she comes up from the extension, her hips are still flexed. So
Yeah.
she's still implying that anterior tilt. And for those that put frontwards tilt, you got the right train of thought. It's just we call it anterior. That was just to kind of Trick, yeah.
Use the verbiage, and remember, using consistent verbiage is to help us communicate, right? Like, we all need to be on the same page of what we call things, so there's no miscommunication when we're talking about clients and people and motion.
You want me to do this one?
Yeah, so what motion would bring you back to anatomical? This is one of the illusions that a leg is moving in space, but it did not actually rotate in the socket. So his left leg looks like it moved, but it didn't. If it was in a cast, that would, like, he could still do this movement with the left leg being in a cast. So what had to have happened is the right hip had to move and have abduction away from the midline.
The left hip is already in anatomical.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait,
I
that's
mean,
the
if
backwards.
we're saying the same, the same thing.
Okay, gotcha.
We're saying the same thing. The left hip's already in anatomical, so the left hip
Yes.
doesn't have to do anything to go back home. It's already home.
Does that make sense to everybody? I think I went over this a couple times.
We're saying the exact same thing. just
Okay,
in a
I didn't know if I
different
mixed up my left.
way.
and
No,
right.
you didn't mix it up. All
I
good.
think for this one, it's good, like for on the test, whenever you see a question like this, is to stand and then go
Just to
back
try
to
to
anatomical.
See if we can get
Because
there.
like, you don't see that this is abducted, you might not see that you have to have abduction.
Outstanding.
Does that make sense?
Outstanding. Let's try to do that for after you go over it. Let's try to bring it up just so that when they rewatch it, they get a.
Yeah.
Not when you go over all the answer choices, but just like before we, so that way they can pause it and get a.
Focus.
Yeah. It's definitely not that. It's whatever. Yeah. I think just this technology from like the 1880s or something.
And most people got this one right. I see that some people put like abduction or they put the other hip. So that's kind of like that good test, review is to make sure like your right is the same as their right, and then with ab and ad, there's a 1-letter difference. So like that's quick to like, if you're just like trying to go through the questions on the test, you might be quick to put the wrong answer choice just because you weren't reading it.
Guys, tell me if you've seen this a lot in your study sessions with other students. It's very common for some students to just look at that picture and assume motion from anatomy. So you look at that picture and you say, oh, the right hip had abduction, just because it's abducted. And you lose the context of, no, this is our starting position in this question, and we're asking you what would have to happen to go back home. So just be wary of assuming, just looking at a picture and your brain coming up with your own question.
So this one was kind of tricky, and it needed more clarification. That's my bad. How many ways can the hip rotate? What I was trying to imply was how many movement choices total could you have at the hip? And so the answer would have been 8. But at a given time, you can only have 6. So if you put 6, you are right, but we're just having different questions. You know what I mean?
Let's name them.
Yeah.
Let's name them. What can the hip do?
Give us one.
Mhm.
Flexion, extension, abduction, adduction, horizontal ab, and ab. This last one's internal maximum. Very good.
So there's 8 total names of things, but at any given time, you can only go 6 ways. So like even if I'm flexed, I can't go 8 ways. From here, I can either extend or flexion, internal, external, and I'm using my shoulders as if they follow the same rules. Or I can horizontal AB and adduct. I can't regular ab and adduct on flex. Like you can't ever have 8 options in one position. So for the test, it would be like, how many different ways can the hip move from anatomical? So if that was the question, then you'd be like, oh, well, horizontal AB and AD is not an option. Or how many different ways can you move when your hips are flexed? Like being flexed, how many different ways can you move from that flexed position? Does that kind of make sense? So to Sarah's point, there's 8 total names of motions, all encompassingly. But I just want to make sure you realize it's not like we have 4 axes and we have like 4 dimensions, right? I just want to clarify that. Now you can still only move in 3 different dimensions at any given time.
I think that could be another one that if he asks like, how many ways can the hips rotate if flexed? That's something that you should
Oh, yeah.
get into on the test because you might think that I'm asking, or he's asking for 8 again, but he's actually asking for 6, and you would do all of them.
3 good questions. Yep. Good
Well,
stuff.
this is Miriam's number. Okay, from
Study
start.
section last semester. You can explain it. I'll do it. It's the
That's
right
you.
hip up.
Yeah, that's her. From study session last semester.
Is it the right knee up?
Yeah, right. knee. Okay, from start to finish, what motion occurred at her left hip? Let's do her left hip first.
Okay. So from start to finish.
Guys, a key landmark there is her left hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How it goes kind of in like that almost, yeah.
Yeah.
Y'all see how this is abduction?
I get a little
A little crease right there. That's what I look at too. I look at the
Yeah.
crease. And then because this is causing, this abduction is causing this hip to externally rotate. You didn't see that? Okay.
That's hard to see.
It's hard to see, but I kind of think of it, this is internal, right? Like if we're just talking about internal, this is internal. So this is external. So sometimes whenever I know it's external or internal, I just don't know which one it is, I'll put my leg either in internal or external and see which one makes more sense right there. So in that case, read it again. This makes more sense. Is that, y'all see kind of that? That makes more sense than this. She doesn't have this kind of movement at the hip.
Also, I look at it as like if I'm right here, I can't see my foot or my calf. As soon as I do this, I can start to see a peak of my, I can see a little bit of my calf. So that's the same as if I go this way, I can see my calf on the
Like
medial
that.
side. So that's one that you should actually do on the test, like get up and do it, because it's kind of hard to see it there. But whenever you do it, you can feel it a little bit.
Yeah, I would start off on the all great stuff. That's 100% correct. If you're having a tough time seeing from that angle, use the clues. Use the clues that are given to you, just like any equation. So the fact that your left hip, your left hand, which is kind of communicating a landmark of the pelvis, right? So if we were looking at her pelvis or more, the fact that her left hand sunk down immediately told me that she's taking her bucket and she's doing this with it. That's why I was like, hey, look at that left hip. That left hip is telling you a lot. Does that make sense? So the fact that she did this, I know that this has to be abduction. Has to be. There's no other way around it. And then once I realized that, oh, this is abducting and this is flex, oh, that was the rotation one that we did in class that time. So now it's trying to figure out if I'm internal or external. And I love Miriam's example. That's how I like to do it as well. The fact that I'm here, my pelvis is now here. How would I have to rotate to go back to where I started? I'd have to internally rotate to go back to where I started. So I had to externally rotate when I left. It's just I moved the socket instead of the wall.
Also, whatever you did, the book thing,
Mhm.
the book rotated, if we think of this as the leg, if I were to start going like this, you had to have abduction.
What a good,
You'll see
a
that?
good analogy.
Okay. I pictured that whenever you
That's
you
good.
did it. Okay.
So the hip is flexed, it automatically will determine whether that's rotation.
If the pelvis is rotating in the front plane. So here's your hip joint, right? Here's anatomical. Normally, frontal plane would be ab and ab. But when I'm flexed, I know this is internal and external rotation of my hip, right? So the frontal plane would coincide with that same dimension. So internal and external of the femur would be the same as internal and external of the socket. So that's why when I'm flexed, if we agree that this is external and this is internal, then My socket has to have internal and external when it's moving in the same plane.
I didn't have this as an answer choice, but did anybody think abduction and adduction? Okay. And I did this one, excuse me, because of that rule that you might think if one's going this way, then it must be the opposite for the hip going the other way.
Where do you stand?
Well, yeah. So that's why I was doing that.
Yeah,
I
you're
didn't put it
good.
as an answer choice
We're
to kind of
team-
give you a hint that it wasn't that though. He won't do that on the test. He's not that nice. I'm just kidding. What about the left hip here? Do y'all see this? Okay, most people got this one right. So that's like here.
Mary, show the answer choices.
Oh.
No, you're good. If you're doing the action, so I was gonna get rid of.
So like this, if I started here, I was horizontally abducted, and I had horizontal abduction to get here.
What can we only tell, this is a good review on first exam material, but the only thing we can tell from one picture without context is where you're at. Or is that joint at? With more context, I go back and I tell them where was it before and after. But the only thing we can really tell from just a static picture, where is any given joint at relative to anatomy?
So the opposite of that, if we started like this, what did we just say we were? Position. Horizontally abducted. So then if I have this motion, what is that? Most people got that right too. I had 8 people say none of these. What did y'all think maybe the option was? If you're breaking up.
I read it backwards.
That's fair, that's fair, that's fair, okay. So you read it as, that's why I tried to, oh, I can zoom in.
Yeah, I thought the finish was the start and the start was the finish.
Because in the textbook, that's how it looks. So I flipped it from the textbook. Thank you for your honesty.
Is that sparkles?
Yeah, I don't know how that just happened. We're gonna leave them. Hip motion observed. This says starting position and ending position. I don't know what's going on.
That's a cool question.
She's also laying down, but it's interesting because if you see, the answer is bilaterally internally rotated, right? So if you see that this is internal, it doesn't matter if she's on the ground doing it. You can also have it going behind your back and still right. But I liked how it kind of, even though she was laying down, if you see internal like this, you saw that, you're like, oh, they're both internally rotated.
I think that's a really good example too of two opposite global spins, right? Like the one hip looks like it's going clockwise, the other one's going counterclockwise. What we talked about, the mirror effect, the butterfly effect, from the joints, it's doing the same thing. I think that's a really good visual of that concept.
And then this is kind of like the opposite of that. So I wanted to give y'all one where it's bilateral of an internal or external, and then where the feet were going in the same direction to see if y'all thought this was also maybe a bilateral. So the position, I wish I could do this, standing up. The position of her right hip
It's good
is
stuff.
like this. So this would be that internal. And then her left hip is like this, so that would be the external. So just because her feet are going the same direction does not imply that the same motion is occurring at both hips.
It's a good question.
It's a good question.
I might steal it.
Just did that one. What is the position of her ankles? Most people got this one, bilaterally plantar flexed. And then I also asked about the knee.
Did you give extension as an answer choice?
For the knee?
No, for the ankle.
No, I didn't. I should have. I
That's
should have.
common.
But I did have extended for
It's
the
gonna look
knees.
so delicious.
How evil.
Okay, I'm just trying to teach.
What about for subtailors? So this. Y'all see that? Kind of, maybe. This.
I'm gonna tell you, and I don't mean to interrupt you, Sarah, but if I don't say it, it's gonna disappear in my brain. I am going to ask, and I want to reward people that come to class or watch videos. I will ask ankle, and then I'll put subtalar positions. And I don't care if, oh, that's part of what I'm trying to teach you, is that I know it's tempting to want to say everything's ankle. But put subtalar answers for subtalar joint. Don't put ankle answers with subtalar positions and motion. That's part of the test. Okay? Trickiness is a function of your understanding of what I'm trying to teach you. And when you get it, you're not going to put an answer choice like right ankle inverted. You're going to put ankle plantar or dorsiflex, and you're going to put subtalar inverted.
And also, even if you're a person that doesn't like to read back over your tests and check them, because I don't like to do that because I'm going to start changing answers just because I'm doubting myself. But that's what I will check. If the question says ankle, I have to make sure I don't have any inversion or eversion. So that's something that you can check for sure. Yeah. Okay.
So if he gave you this exact one, and he said what's happening at the right ankle, then you wouldn't say inverted, everted. You would say dorsiflex, kind of?
Yeah. Dorsiflex.
Dorsiflex. But if he's asking for subtalar, there's only two options that you're should be looking for. You know what I mean? Okay. Wait, I'm gonna go back into it if you want to slide up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this subtalar is inverted. We know that because if we were to freeze her, if we were to freeze this, it would look like this. Whenever you pull it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we were to freeze this subtalar, we would go in.
Mm-hmm.
You see that? Okay, so that's inversion of left ankle. Then right ankle, sorry. Oh my God, I did it.
Whoa.
Inversion of left subtalar. Then this one, it's hard to see.
She might be more.
It might
she's
be
a little
more
better than that.
anatomical.
Well, she's more like this than the picture. I feel like she has enough.
Yeah.
To be inverted. I'm just on the footstool.
Yeah.
I don't know how I see it. I think that we might have talked about this in my class. I don't know if we talked about it with y'all. But you know how you have the eyes? Like you kind of see like you put eyes to see where the joints kind of seeing. Y'all do that? No?
You did nose and
Yeah. We got more into those kind of landmarks for the third test, but for this one, we like put eyes on like the hips to see like what they were seeing. Like for example, like seeing like your shin better, like for internal term. This one, we put the eyes like here, if that makes sense, on the inside of your foot. So inverted, then like it was more like my eyes were looking at the ground versus if I'm everted, the eyes were looking up. Kind of how we saw it. So opposite. Oh, opposite. Yeah, these are looking up. This is looking down. Sorry.
The way I just realized it is that if you're wearing like high tops or boots or whatever, the ankles are grabbed, they're held together.
Uh-huh.
But whenever you're still trying to bend and invert, the shoe will stay still. But it'll
It
bend.
leans. Yeah. Yeah.
It'll open up on the other side. If you don't bend, invert, the shoe will stay.
Just straight down. Yeah, that's good. Like, cause you'll have that kind of like tilt at it.
Yeah.
And I like I said, we had the eyes. You remember us talking about eyes for inverted, everted, and how they were on the inside of the foot rather than like on the bottom or on the top. I feel like that's how we saw it. That's how we kind
Because
of
if you
looked
have
at the test.
inversion, your eyes are going to look up, or you can see the medial side of your foot more. If eversion, your eyes are looking towards the floor, I guess. Or they're looking up like this, but it's up the lateral side of your leg.
Yeah, and that's also kind of like with whenever you're here and you pick it up, you would see that if I could pick it up and bring my foot up, this would be.
Okay,
It's kind of how we thought about it.
Inverted is medial, everted is lateral. like
Yes.
in Relative to
Mhm.
what we're saying. And a cool thing, obviously not on the test, but I try to say cool things. Some athletes that will, put braces on their ankles. Sometimes, it's rare, but sometimes when they have tib-fib fractures, it's because their subtalar joint wasn't able to invert, that was rigid, and so that force goes up the chain. The force out the chain. So sometimes trying to prevent inversion and eversion could be a detriment of passing that force up the chain. So, people say braces are bad. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that when you try to prevent motion in one way, those forces have to go somewhere else.
Did we also talk about, I could just be remembering wrong, but how if we want to agree on the angle, like the type where we're talking about the angle being, then we can have an angle conversation? Okay, because I kind of see this as like
Medial.
medial, yeah. I see this as kind of like an acute angle right there, and I see this as more of a straight line, like an obtuse angle over here. Does that make sense? I can draw it online.
You know, it does. It's just remember the main thing when you're playing the angle game is you have to remember that as you change this acuteness,
Mhm.
you're also changing an angle that's on the other side. And
Right.
sometimes students will wait, aren't I decreasing this angle? So I'm
Right.
increasing that one and I'm decreasing that one and increasing that one. So as long as your angle stays consistent,
Right.
you can play that game. So in other words, for this one, as long as we're like, look, the only angle we're gonna look at is this medial angle.
Right.
As long as you keep it consistent, then you can play that game.
Does anybody see it better with the medial angle, kind of like that?
Example, elbow flexion messes with the anterior angle, but knee flexion messes with the posterior angle. So as long as you're consistent and you don't go back and forth with, as I increase this one, I'm decreasing that one. As I increase that one, I'm decreasing this one. So it increases and decreases. You kind of play mess with it. So I have zero problem with angles as long as we're consistent where it is. That's why we typically try to teach motion with functionality. Because functionality doesn't care about defining angles. In the field, out of field, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Of course. So this one, we should have said plain, because it is flexed.
Ah,
Okay.
yeah, that's true.
So
Not a,
left knee, I'm not gonna do this whole picture because, just not feeling it today. But it's like a cut and plant, plant cut, whatever. So it's kind of like he would start here and end here, where the knee is shifting more medial, the foot stays lateral. So I see that, but you have to use your discretion and make sure that inside, outside. But if your foot is on the outside of your knee, or like foot is lateral to the knee, then you had external rotation of the knee. Does that make sense? Or if your toes are on the outside or lateral side of your knee, and that's external.
Can I interject? First of all, everything she's saying is, again, chef's kiss perfect. The knee, though, can be so, like, the knee is made up of a lot of parts, right? So let's use a local landmark that we're all familiar with, and that's our patella.
Yeah.
So when your knee is flexed, your patella can't go anywhere. When your knee is extended, you can kind of shift your patella around. But when you're flexed, you kind of lock that patella into its groove. So if you're looking at so in other words, what I'm saying, Miriam's saying exactly the right thing, but let's use like a representative of the knee, that patella. So look at how that patella is facing like over here, and the toes are facing over there. Does everybody see that? And that's what Miriam's trying to say, that those things are not lined up. The patella representing that knee and that foot are not lined up.
Right. Did, besides the people that book flags, because my bad, can y'all see on y'all's side of it that the toes are facing forward, but her patella is facing inwards almost, kind of like that? Or like medial, or medial? Did y'all see that, or is that kind of tricky? Because this was the example of the cut and plank, when this and this is not in.
There's the toes, and for them to line up with the knee, they would have to rotate like this. And that would be internal rotation of the knee. So therefore, they have to be externally rotated. Make sense?
See that?
So is it fair to face judgment that it's externally rotated if the foot is outside?
Correct, but it's all relative to, yes, but it's all relative, right? So in other words, my foot didn't move lateral. My femur and thus the patella moved medial, thus making the toes lateral. It's no different. It really is no different than, it's the same concept, just in a new place. My toes are lateral, but I literally moved the toes lateral. My toes are still lateral because I moved the knee medial. That's almost like saying, if you don't mind, Miriam, stand front. So Miriam, take a big step to the right. Miriam is now to my right. Come back. Miriam is now to my right. She didn't move at all. I moved to the left. She's still to my right. Does that make sense? It's the same exact concept. It's just our instinct wants to say something's moving in, and you want to give it credit for internal rotation. You want to say something's moving to the left, so I want to give it left. But she's just as much to my right as when she does this. It's the same relative change.
Cool. Okay. We're almost at time. Is that the?
This is the end of it.
Okay, cool. So the thing that was up here at the beginning of class, you posted it, right? The knowledge check.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The knowledge
Post the
check
answers.
is
We can do
posted.
that on Monday.
Yes. We're gonna go over the answers on Monday, and then we can also like post them Monday.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. But
Um,
it gives everybody a chance to maybe go over this weekend and try to formulate some.
Yeah.
What was today helpful?
Yes.
Good. Thank you for coming to class.
Study session Monday at 6 p.m. Either in here or the step lab. Just check. I'm gonna have to see if we can get this room. Tell your friends.
I put it in the group. Yeah, I'm gonna open it next week.
I know. Yay.
I think this is good for Fridays.
I think so. I like having like this Friday is like a warm up to your studying.